everyone. My name is Adam Mering. I am with Oliver Wyman. We're very excited to have you here today. Oliver Wyman today wants to take you post-noise. That means two things. One, it's hopefully me talking over the noise in the back of the room, but it means clearing your mind of the noise, and it also means cutting through the noise so that you can learn something new. But first, before we learn something new, I thought we would test your knowledge of what you already know. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna play a little quiz, a little game. I have questions. I will call on someone from the audience. If you guess the question correct, you win a prize. That simple. All right, let's do it. First question. What is the size of the digital health market in the UK? Who wants to, I have multiple choice up here. Who wants to go? Who wants to give it a try? Anyone? All right, right here in the front. What's your name?
Hello, my name is Orhan. I'm going to say 100 million.
And where are you from?
Turkey.
Turkey. Well, welcome to London. All right, here are your choices. Is it between 10 and 100 million pounds, 100 million to a billion pounds, 1 to 10 billion pounds, or more than 10 billion pounds?
I'm going to say B.
B? B or D?
B as in boy.
B.
So
what do we think? D. I hear D. I hear C. The answer is, it's D. And it's actually more than 10 billion pounds. Very good, sir, in the front row. Let's go to question 2. How many patient-provider interactions are there every day in the United Kingdom? Who wants to take a stab at it? Come on, someone. Right here in the front. Oh, actually, right here. I heard someone on the side. All right, what's your name?
I'm So from Japan.
From where?
Japan.
Japan, okay. Traveled here even longer than I did from New York. Patient-provider interactions? Is it 50 to 100K? Is it 100K to a million? Is it more than a million? Or is it 7? I think it might be 7. I think it might be more than 7. I think I had 7 with my provider today. What do we think?
It's gonna be C, I think.
You gotta be C? What do we think? C? All right, let's do it. More than a million. It is indeed 2 million. Very good.
How much money do I win?
What do you win?
Yeah.
See me after this. You'll find me after the show, so I'll be in the back. All right. Last question. I want everyone to participate in this, all right? So the question is, what % of the world's data is generated by the healthcare industry? So I want you to applaud if you think it's the correct answer. All right, first, do you think it's less than 25%? Applaud if you think it's less than 25%. Nobody thinks it's less than 25%. Okay, I hear some. Do we think it's more than 25%? Okay. And can you guys applaud one more time just for me? Thank you, thank you. All right, and the answer is, it is more than 25%, and it's actually 30%. And I wish I could stick around for more fun, but I know that we want to get to the talk now. So this abundance of data, 30% of all data, is just one aspect of the health tech revolution. And to tell you more, I am now going to pass things off to my friend and colleague, Oliver Wyman's Handre Schmidt.
Good afternoon, South by Southwest London. Thank you very much for joining us for this, what I think is a very exciting session, and a panel of esteemed colleagues that represent both the private sector, the public sector, and also kind of the innovation sphere, which when you start to get into this discussion, you'll notice the excitement and passion they have for digital health data and AI and what the future can hold. So what I'm going to do is do a brief introduction of each one of you and then ask you for a fun fact about yourself.
Oh, wow.
Please don't make it like professional. Let's have some fun with this. So closest to me, Alex Merwin. He's head of health and bio startups at AWS. Spent 15 years in helping build startups and realizing people's dreams and ideas and helping them make their way into clinical practice. So, fun fact, Alex.
All right, so I once had breakfast in San Francisco, lunch on the Mag Mile in Chicago, and dinner in Times Square, New York, all in one day.
Wow.
Yeah, it was a lot of flying.
Did you have indigestion after that?
I didn't. It was with the startup. It was a new product rollout. We had to be very compressed in how we delivered the messaging. And so it was a crazy day. But at the end of it, I told my boss, hey, pretty cool.
Nice. Adama, VP of Early Development and Research, Digital Transformation. So you're going to help pharma companies make things happen, bring us new medicines, bring us exciting innovation. She spent the last 20 years as a change maker in really transitioning us from what is effectively a very analog process of early phase research, moving into making that more digital, trying to speed things up, and really bring drug innovation to the market sooner. Excited to have you here, all the way from Copenhagen. Flew in this morning, so well-traveled like Alex. Fun fact.
Yeah, lovely to be here, and hi everyone. So, fun fact about me is I absolutely love fishing. And we tend to go to the Indian Ocean with my family most winters. And I spend hours and hours out in the sea, line fishing, trying to be sustainable. And I only catch what I can eat. So, apologies to the non-fish eating folks. But it is the most amazing sport where you're kind of woman against nature. So that's a little bit of fun fact.
I like that. Yeah. Empowering. Brilliant. And then on the far end, Hassan Chaudhury, who, so many titles, but the one we're going to pick is Head of Commercial at Great Ormond Street. But Hassan spends his life trying to bridge that gap between public and private sector, which is one we'll get onto a bit later, because that's a very important relationship in how we actually make things happen. How do we take the innovation? How do we embed the innovation? And how we get different partners to work together. Fun fact about you.
So can I say something illegal?
Probably not.
It's South by Southwest, of course you can.
But, yeah.
I was used illegally as a social worker, because I wasn't qualified as a social worker. I was used illegally as a social worker in the early 2000s for the elderly, which was one of my first jobs. And that taught me what was wrong with the system.
One of the things that we need to improve on. Nice.
It taught me a few things, yeah.
Perfect. So let's jump into the questions. So we're going to explore a couple of themes, and the first one I want to see is I want to get this passion out of you. What excites you about the future of digital health data and AI? And how do you see that really manifesting in the public sector, in the NHS? How's this going to change the world for patients, for the worried the well?
So can I start with something really small? I'm really excited by not having to fill out forms anymore. I'm really excited by not having to log in 4 times. I'm really excited by the idea that a nurse doesn't have to walk to one machine, write something on her hand, walk to another machine and transpose it in because the 2 machines don't talk to each other. I'm excited by the idea that a paramedic isn't going to have to stand there waiting in a corridor while somebody is dying, knowing that there was another hospital they could have dropped them off to, but they didn't know. I'm interested in those bits that go missing in healthcare. And we are a little bit behind the times. I think the NHS is still the world's largest user of fax machines. So we do have a lot to do.
Perfect. So on that topic, Adama, what do you see as the opportunity for pharma to get involved, accelerate things?
Yeah, no, this is a super, super relevant topic for today, especially the times we're living in this AI boom. In order to fully answer that question, I want to just spend a few moments explaining how drugs are made. So people who aren't from the pharma industry really understand what the challenge is in order to appreciate the opportunities that technology offers. So we start from the labs, we go to animal testing, we go to human testing. This is important and it's needed because, of course, from the days of post-World War II, we have to protect people. And so we're regulated, and in order for us to bring the best to the market, to the pharmacies, we have to follow this process. It is in silos, it is in isolation, and it takes forever. It takes 10 years to bring a new drug to market. Now, when you think about those challenges and all the diseases that we are not treating very well, we need to do this a lot better. So having technology being introduced to the value chain, to workflows, at the fingertips of scientists and clinicians is a bit like, for the creatives here, having this perfect orchestra where you have all the musicians playing music blindfolded. And now suddenly, we're starting to see. And so you can start to imagine what that music will sound like. In the pharma industry, it means efficiencies, it means speed, it means accuracy, it means that we're taking care of not just the patients, we're taking care of even the animals. So we don't actually have to do so many tests that we don't need to. So I see that as the most wonderful opportunity that is presented to us in this modern day, and it really, really excites me.
Super. I think one of the hardest things about working in this sector is you get the newspaper article and it says, hey, there's this new drug that's going to help us with, is it Parkinson's or, obesity is a topical one at the moment. And there's a clinical trial. I think there was one on the weekend as well in oncology about this new treatment, new protocol. And you read through the article, then you realize it's 5 years away. And it's just a positive study. And I don't think we always appreciate everything that goes into when the press picks it up and when things actually start realizing themselves in the treatments that we get as patients. Alex, to you. You're really on the cusp of what is new, what is innovative, what is the next frontier of how we're going to do things. What excites you?
Yes, I just want to thank everybody for coming here today because the audience is going to be composed of people who are working on early stage drug development, translational research, frontline healthcare delivery, and I'm hoping there's some people here who don't work in healthcare at all, but maybe you're a little bit curious about it. And the thing is, everybody comes from different perspectives, but we all have one common goal, which is to reduce the time to clinical value. And so what really excites me right now, obviously AI creates a lot of opportunity. I think everybody in the audience has interacted with AI systems through the chatbots. Now, those chatbots are trained on the corpus of the public internet. What excites me is using the same techniques behind those chatbots for biomedical data. I'll give you an example. There's an incredible company that we work with called Acrivia Health. It's a spin-out from Oxford. They gained access through collaboration with the psychiatric practices for high acuity conditions across the UK. These are conditions like dissociative disorders, bipolar disorders, treatment-resistant depression, schizophrenia. These diseases aren't cured, they're managed. There is no curative path. And for anybody in the audience who knows somebody afflicted by these, they know how difficult it is. So the 10-year clinical history of one of those patients with a psychiatrist is a book. And it will be written in a unique style to each of the therapists. They took those long-form clinical records and pre-trained transformer models back in 2017, 2018, and created clusters of statistical relevance. They've now gained funding to do a 50,000-person genetic study overlaying that information on those patient clusters to create new gene therapy targets for these conditions. That excites me. Like, how do we take the stuff that, I don't know what you all do with it, but I use it for like cocktail recipes, what do I make with what's in the, for curing uncurable disease, and it's just a thrilling time, and this is the right space to be working in.
Super. So, I think, Hassan, back to you maybe. The NHS holds a lot of our data, all our health data in different fragmented parts. And I would assume, I think I was reading a stat the other day that we somewhere between 90 and 95% of our health records in different NHS configurations is now digital. The scary thing is that the target was to get to 90% by 2020. So, to a certain extent, there are many practical challenges in using this data, in really harnessing the potential that I think Alex and Adama talk about being able to, that we're excited to do. So what are these challenges? Can you dive into what are the things we need to overcome?
Okay. Let me give you a couple of them quickly. The first is that we've been naive, generally as a health system, in trusting big organizations who come in and give us a system. We pay lots of money for it. And what they do is they give us a system and the data is locked into that system. So when we say we don't want that system anymore, we then lose the data, or the data is in a proprietary format and we can't take it out of that format because we don't have the brain power and the capability and the capacity to go do that. Because the health system is generally just trying to run doing what it normally does. So the transformation work is hard. It's on top, right? So because we trusted these systems, we haven't been open standards and we haven't been open systems, we've got screwed over. And there's a big movement now of people saying we need to set the standards for these big vendors to follow so that we have, and this is the word that they use often, interoperability, so systems that talk to each other. There's another word, a big word, semantic. Is the meaning the same? So let me give you an example. You might describe a heart attack as a myocardial infarction, and someone else might call that an infarct. There are 3 different ways of explaining the same thing. And to make that machine readable, you'd have to turn that into a clinical terminology. Otherwise, you lose semantic interoperability. So it's not just the data is of a different format, apples and oranges. You're actually speaking about something in a different language. So we haven't started out that way. Estonia became digital later, so it adopted those things sooner. South Korea, all of those countries that have managed to start later than the UK haven't got the same legacy issues. And if you're slightly larger and you've got legacy issues, you're in deep trouble.
Okay, we're in deep trouble then.
We really are. And so now we have to ask ourselves, without the money and without the things that we had 10, 15, 20 years ago, how do we do more with less? And that's why we have to think really carefully. We have to bring industry in now so that we make the plan that works for us for 10 years' time. So this is what's currently being drafted, the 10-year plan for health. And a big part of that is going to be open standards. A big part of that is how do we work with vendors who follow something that means that we're not beholden, we're not locked in. Because if we get locked in again, we're in deep trouble.
There is hope. I just want to jump in and say that there is hope. The solution is in a federated approach across many smaller players, right? A more competitive marketplace with open standards, and a lot of boring stuff's been happening on the background to enable this, like HL7 to FHIR and different protocol updates. But even commercially, it's just a more competitive space, and we're not going to name EMR providers, which you just kind of talked about. Yeah. But there's more in the market, and in the UK we actually
EMR,
electronic medical record, or electronic patient record. I work with so many health techs that are trying to improve delivery in the space. What gives me hope are solutions that directly address the workflow challenges of clinicians. So the scribes are having a moment. I just want to collaborate. Dom at Tortoise, I really look up to them a lot for their clinical efficacy. If you've not heard of them, you check them out. It's competitive. There's a lot of players in the space. But companies that are just looking at one niggle within the provider workflow and how do we smooth that out. And then finally, the other thing that gives me hope is characterizing disease on a molecular level instead of a clinical note level, right? So that anybody who's worked with clinical data within the electronic medical record knows that it's incredibly noisy. You have to get it to interoperate. Well, you could just go directly to the disease pathology and use advanced diagnostics to enable precision medicine. And the problem is cost and its timing. But the technology is advancing very, very rapidly there. The UK study on GRAIL is a great example of that. We're really at the forefront. But yeah, it's been a bumpy few decades. Like healthcare's been behind in adopting technology compared to other sectors.
So forgive me, I agree. And I think the answer therefore is how do we innovate? And the innovation bit now cannot just be buying off the shelf. It's got to be addressing a problem statement. And we're now realizing, too late perhaps, we should have had industry with us at the beginning. We should have had the large vendor and the small vendor with us. And from the very beginning, think about the problem statement. And that's how we get out of the crisis. Of course, there's hope, right? At Great Ormond Street right now, and you mentioned Tortoise. Tortoise is an ambient voice technology. It's a scribe. So generally, what happens is that you have to make your notes either during the consultation, if you're a physician, or you do it afterwards. And if you do the notes afterwards, you forget things. And you may actually just go to the toilet instead of making those notes. That's what happens to a lot of physicians, right? So ambient voice technology is really important, and we've been trialing that at Great Ormond Street because one of the founders was actually a PhD student working at Great Ormond Street early on at our innovation unit. That's an example of what we need more of. More collaboration, more working together. Otherwise, I think the AI revolution is going to pass us by.
I mean, I can give you the context of how we approach this similar problem in the research world. So imagine scientists in the labs, and these are PhDs, years postdoc, the smartest people you can probably ever meet and have a drink with. They like to pipette, believe it or not. They like to sit there, putting liquids into different tiny little tubes, thousands of them, and watching experiments happen. Now, when you automate and you bring in technology systems that says that data has to go into a system that you can share, you can federate, they look at you like you've just grown two heads. So it's similar to what I don't know if you guys cook or bake, when this, is it Auntie Betty or whatever they call it, the baking company decided to create a product and they sent it home to people and nobody used it because it was all in one mix. And they thought, well, that's not baking. And then as soon as they said you can crack an egg, people started baking. So we've brought in behavioral science to understand human behavior and understand how humans interact with machines. To say, if that scientist likes to pipette, we're going to put a pseudo pipetting step and link the systems so that they will do the difficult lift, but they'll do the part that they do enjoy. I really do believe that if we remove the delight from all of the activities that we're introducing with technology, we're taking the human side of work. And that's part of the problem.
We need to stop thinking about AI as replacing humans in this process, right? The value is going to come from being in relationship with AI systems and having a dialectic partner to interrogate our assumptions, help us with hypothesis generation. And ultimately, it's a workflow challenge of how do you create a tool that people actually want to use, which in the consumer world we're used to, and it's just becoming more prevalent. That's an amazing example.
I think the nice thing about this panel is you guys are so passionate about this, you're kind of asking yourselves the questions. So maybe from a pharma perspective, the public sector, the NHS has a lot of data. The innovators are often bootstrap financed. They're great ideas, but it's not flush with money. Pharma is used to making big bets on things. They're used to trialing and failing. So pharma has a lot of the qualities that you need, and there's kind of a back-end benefit of good innovation in science because your products roll out to a world of patients. So how are pharma kind of overcoming this challenge or bridging this gap between the NHS or the public sector being the one that's doing a lot of the treating, the innovators coming up with the ideas that you have to incorporate? How do you see the role of pharma in there?
Yeah, I mean, I see it quite simplistically. It's a bit like an electric car. And I'll give you another analogy. So basically, the driver of the car is the clinician. So they're in control, the HCPs. The person who made the engine is pharma. So we design the drugs. We tell the car that you are a car. You're going to go from A to B. You're going to have 4 wheels because that's what's needed. The people who are suffering from the disease will be, if it's electric, there'll be the electric, electricity for the car or petrol for the car. So that's the data. Without the data, the car won't move, right? And then finally, the roadmap will be the regulators because they tell us where to go and where not to go, and they have the traffic rules. So going back to what we do and how we actually operate, to your point about standards, we follow or we try to impose standardization. So there's this principle called FAIR, which is findable, accessible, interoperable, and reproducible. So we want to make sure that we follow those principles across every single point that data is collected so that we can share it, we can make sure that it's reusable, because the beauty of data is when you collect it once, you don't want to collect it again, especially if you have to take a blood sample, a tissue sample. It's ethically wrong. It's also a burdensome process for the system, and it's quite costly. So we're trying to avoid all of that. Another component of, I think, where pharma is really stepping in that probably isn't maybe widely shared is on the actual ethics side of things. So when you introduce technology and AI, there is this bias that you can introduce to your data. So if you don't collect data that represents everybody in this room, everybody on this planet, then you're only researching a subset of patients. So traditionally, we typically research on healthy white males. Now, if you use AI on that, and you're looking for, I don't know, targets for breast cancer, you might find like a 0.01%, or other conditions that don't exist in that population. So your AI is not going to solve for that. So when we go into the systems where you want to go end to end to actually improve healthcare, connect with patients at home, with wearables, pharma plays a role here by saying, we will make sure that we are ethical, we're also collecting data in a fair way, and we're making sure that everybody on that value chain, especially the patients, know what's happening with their data through consent. So that's some of the approaches that we're using.
Cool. Alex, maybe to you. What is the role of kind of innovators and AWS as a supporter of that? And what success stories have you seen kind of looking ahead? Where are we going?
Yeah, so for anybody who doesn't know, AWS is a cloud service provider. Before cloud service providers, if you stood up a digital application, you'd have to buy a bunch of computers, you'd put them into your closet, you'd hook them up to the internet, and then if the internet connection goes, then your application drops, right? So you lease infrastructure from a provider like AWS to enable you to build very quickly, to be very agile, and to have your costs scale with usage. So from the innovator side, we provide this immense advantage of taking technology that's been developed for the largest enterprises in the world and just democratizing access to anybody who just goes and signs up on our website. So I mean, it's truly transformative, and so many businesses have innovated from the cloud. But where we see ourselves playing an important role in the ecosystem today is when we look at large, incredible pharmaceutical companies, right? Like Novo and others. They have transformed the way that we treat disease, and they hold unparalleled data from all the clinical studies across the therapeutic areas that they've advanced. But depending on the therapeutic area, depending on the patient population, the ability to convert that data into insight, which advances the science, is actually very difficult. And the way that is bridged today is through traditional milestone-based agreements with life sciences companies that are ring-fenced to a certain asset. But in that world, the pharmaceutical company is actually not getting better at core R&D, it's the innovator that is. And then obviously the asset can be licensed in later. So we think that there's a need in the ecosystem for both technical and commercial infrastructure to enable collaboration between early stage tech bio companies and pharma. And we think we can play a really large part in that, in safeguarding the technology of the innovator, but enabling it to be leveraged very easily within pharma R&D environments that are in silico. So I just think there's an incredible opportunity ahead.
Super.
And we're doing the same at Great Ormond Street. We're moving to the cloud, and we've got data that's structured, so it comes out of our systems. But we also have unstructured data. So you've got images, for example, and you've got digitized pathology. And all of that needs to go somewhere. So AWS is working with us at Great Ormond Street to give us a landing zone. And we're managing this landing zone so that we can put our data into something we call it multimodal, right? So the reason why it's multimodal is because you can tell the story of a person not just by looking at one type of data, but by many modes of data, and that gives you the full picture. And that's where we get to the heart of what the real tech revolution is, which is how can we predict, how can we get ahead of what's happening, rather than passively wait for someone to get sick and then react. And that's really the danger that we have currently of the way the world system is.
So I want to wrap it up in a bit, just to give the audience some chance to ask a couple of questions. But maybe Hassan, yourself, Adama, after that. Do you have any success stories that give us hope that we're on this journey and really going to get there this time around in terms of the digital revolution, 2.0, if I can call it that?
We've got loads of examples, but they're all of the same type. They're all different players saying we can't do it alone and all coming together. So the example we did with AWS is a good one. We want to do something where you take a blood test and you want to do some report on it, a histopathology report. As a result of that work, you know it's going to be full of manual processes and friction. So we're trying to do agentic AI on this, right? Sitting there as one of our projects at Great Ormond Street. We know that we need that data to be pulled from different systems. We know those systems don't always cooperate. And that's why we need to bring in AWS. That's why we need to bring in smaller vendors who've got solutions that can help us bridge those gaps. That's why we're working with Roche at the moment, which is one of the world's biggest pharma companies, because that is how we're going to get to the future. It's about collaboration.
Yeah, and equally, there's so many success stories across that value chain, as I described earlier, from the lab. So instead of performing the pipettes, and wet lab experiments and animal testing, we now can use computational methods where you can actually have the same experiment designed on a computer to actually tell you that you don't need to do this, and that experiment, and you only need to do a few very, very refined ways of testing. So instead of, if you can imagine something taking a year, we're talking months. Instead of months, we're talking weeks. Instead of weeks, we're talking days. So we're seeing a lot of these incremental shifts. In research, it's at the earliest part, so you won't see a drug automatically. Remember the 10-year paradigm? But what's really interesting is it's motivating everybody to start working in a faster way, in a smarter way. And that's what I think is the magic here. I keep talking about the magic where when humans sit closer to AI and they sit closer to technology, our lives change. And that really is magic. So we're seeing it across productivity gains, we're seeing it across efficiency gains in terms of quality, the quality of the output, the quality of the data. It's so much more meaningful, and it's changing so fast, actually. So every day there's something new that comes up, and that continues to just motivate us to do more.
I feel like we get a lot out of crises. And one of those things I think COVID taught the private and public sector collaboration was if you work together, things can happen faster. And I think getting back to the newspaper article, if that could be 2 years, not 5 years, to us seeing the results of a lot of this underlying work that happens, that'll definitely be amazing and save many, many lives. So I want to open it up to the audience. Are there any kind of questions from the audience side? Gentleman ahead, I think there's a mic that will come your way. Front here.
Thank you so much to the panelists for this conversation. I'm not going to point this question to anyone, maybe the moderator can help me. I've worked as a paramedic before, but I'm an AI researcher, so I'm in a unique position here. But my conversation is, I've seen the disconnect of these systems firsthand, and my own hypothesis is that can we not make that technology, yes, there's standards, but I think from the implementation perspective, more open source, for example, like we're seeing in other industries. For some reason, I'm not seeing that grasp in the healthcare space. Is there a particular reason for that? Because as an entrepreneur or as a technologist, I kind of see that as a potential way to maybe solve this challenge.
I'd love to take that. There's a market challenge with open source software. You need a market maker. There are promising innovations. So Manai from NVIDIA, Harris and I are both good friends with Newton's Tree. So Harris is the founder, and they've built their core technology using open source technology. You ultimately have a distribution challenge. So you need large incumbents to take bets on open standards. What do you guys think?
Very briefly, the people that make the decisions are being asked to either spend lots of money on a trusted solution or to take a risk and do something that should work, but it's a bit homebrew. And most people are worried that their jobs are on the line. Even though CIOs want to do this, public sector CIOs aren't given the leeway. And I think that's why we end up with closed systems more than open. But it is moving more towards open.
Yeah, I think between regulation and the risk of failure, both public sector and industry are very conservative buyers, very risk averse, because if things go wrong, they go wrong at scale. So there's a lot of complexity in there. I think we have time for one more question. Gentleman at the back. Or
Hi, hello. I just wanted to ask a question on sort of like open source of genomics data and other data like socioeconomic data. And is there a concern about potential increases in health inequality as we see more strains on governments to provide public healthcare and increase in private healthcare where more of that AI tech is marketed towards people who have got more socioeconomic advantage and are more healthy, and potentially people who are suffering from inequality might get left behind? Thank you.
That's a good question. I think the danger that I can see on health inequalities is where we're going to implement solutions in the public sector because we've got the mass population that we look after, and we're going to do it in a way that leaves people behind. That, for me, is the most immediate risk. There's a following risk, which is that individuals, consumer health, will start to be in the hands of people who've got the money to be able to look after themselves. They can biohack their way into things. They already had sharp elbows. They already knew how to get their kids into private schools. They already have the advantages. And that's where I can see a widening inequality. But the biggest problem for me, really, right now, is that we are putting in systems without thinking about the mass impact. And that's where we have to think about equity now.
Exactly. Yeah, and wanted to just quickly mention, when it comes to training your LLMs, if you don't have a representative data set for training, you're already screwed from the start. So making sure that you have a governance that really checks where the data's coming from and how it's being maintained, most importantly, really determines what the output is. So garbage in, garbage out.
Yeah, and finally, open markets will never fully work in healthcare, because when you have a good where the willingness to pay when you're healthy is nothing, and your willingness to pay when you're sick is infinite, market economics, they just don't work. So the public sector plays a really important role. The one thing I'll say is that I think the solution to this problem is actually more innovation, not less innovation, right? So the distribution of it, I think, is a policy discussion, but from a technology perspective, we just need to move quickly and do no harm.
Thank you. So, audience, I want to thank you for joining us for this session, and then to the panelists, Hassan, Adama, Alex, thank you very much for sharing your experience and your expertise. And look forward to seeing what the next, hopefully 2 to 5 years can show us.
Great, thank you.
Thank
you very much.